Computer Programming for Kids, Step 16, of Lists, Splits, and Foreaches, or the Return of Billygoat Butthead. It's time. We are finally going to read the CSV files we created into our app. Here's how we will do it. 1. At the top of form1.cs, add the following in with the other uses clauses. Using system.collections.generic, semicolon, using system.text, semicolon. These uses clauses are added so that we can use a list and split. What? You'll find out below. 2. Add this above the constant declarations, const, C-O-N-S-T, and below the bool or boolean variable. List, left angle bracket, multiple choice class, right angle bracket, MCC list, semicolon. This is an interesting data type. A list, which is a type of collection, sort of like an array. It is a list of our custom class named multiple choice class. In other words, any number of multiple choice class instances are saved into the list named MCC list. So the list itself is named MCC list, but it contains multiple instances or copies of multiple choice class. So we will create multiple instances or copies of our custom class, one for each line in the CSV file we load, populate them with data, and then add them to the list named MCC list. You can think of a list as a special type of array, a value-added array that is easy to work with. We'll see how to do that soon. 3. Add the following code into the combo box select multi-choice file, selected index changed event handler, so that it ends up looking like this. And there's a fairly long block of code that it shows that you can see in the newsletter. There's obviously a lot going on here. In a nutshell, this code fires or runs after the user has selected a CSV file from the combo box, which triggers the combo box's selected index changed event, causing this code to run. Let's examine what the code does now. First, the name of the file selected is stored in the string variable selected file for future reference using this code. And then there's a line of code that does that. Note, before we go any further, note the declaration of variables and constants at the beginning of the event handler. Just as these variable and constant declarations can be made at the beginning, at the top of the code, where they are global or generally accessible everywhere within the form, you can and do often declare variables and constants within methods and event handlers too. When you do that, they are local, only visible to that block of code. Note too that we didn't name this event handler. Visual Studio named it automatically by using the control's name, inserting an underscore, and then appending the name of the event that is being triggered to the name. To continue examining the code, the file selected by the user is then loaded into the string array using this line of code, and it shows that line of code. This code is probably fairly easy to read. All the lines or contents of the selected file are read and assigned to the string array variable. But if you're still struggling with wrapping your head around it, that's okay. It takes time. Besides, you don't really need to get it all just yet anyway. You can always come back and reread sections you found tough later. You might be surprised how much easier it sinks in on subsequent readings after acquiring a more rounded out understanding of what's going on. Next, the for each loop iterates over every line from the file, which is now in our string array. And it shows the line of code of the for each. The next thing that happens is the line from the file is split into separate lines on each comma, and it shows a line of code that does that. Here, the string array subphrases ends up being populated with the contents of the line, but with each element separated from the elements that came before it and after it by commas on its own separate line. So, the line, which of the following was a member of the Australian rock and roll outfit named Little River Band, comma, Star B. Birtles, comma, Billygoat Butthead, comma, Big Speederbeck, is split apart on the commas and populated into the subphrases array of string like so. First line contains the question. Second line contains the Star B. Birtles, indicating that that is the correct answer. The third line is Billygoat Butthead, and the fourth line is Big Speederbeck. As you can see, the original line is now spread out or spread down over 4 lines instead of just 1. Still with me? Okay, take a deep breath now. In fact, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and feel like you need a break, go ahead and take one. If it's possible for you and safe to do so, get a little fresh air and exercise. Walk around the block or around your house or around the world if you have the time and energy to do so. Take one or both of your parents or at least your dog or pet duck-billed platypus with you, though. We don't want you out there on your own. Note, in fact, it's always a good idea to take frequent breaks when programming for your brain as well as the rest of your body. Sitting in one spot for extended periods of time can lead to gluteus maximus syndrome, which is medical science's technical jargon for your butt might fall asleep. Even worse, perhaps, your head will get foggy and mushy and resistant to embracing new thoughts. Give the poor pinkish-gray, wrinkly thing a breather. I'm talking about your brain here. Okay, so now you're nice and refreshed and ready to dive in again. There's just a little more code to go through, and then we'll sign off for this step. Remember that in programming we start counting at 0? The first line in the string array is at position 0. That is the question element, the first part of the line. The second line in the string array is candidate answer 1 at position 1. The third line in the string array is candidate answer 2 at position 2. And finally, the fourth line in the string array is candidate answer 3 at position 3. With that in mind, it becomes clear why we declared the constants above. And it shows the constants. There's a question, integer constant, which is assigned the value of 0. Candidate answer 1, assigned 1. Answer 2, assigned 2. Answer 3, assigned 3. Onward. We now create an instance of our custom class using this code, and it shows how that is done. So to continue with the earlier analogy, we use the recipe, multiple choice class, to bake a cookie, MCC, which is what the instance of the class is named in the code. This allows the elements from the line, now each on their own line in the subphrases string array, to be assigned to MCC's members like this. And it shows the code that does that, which uses the constants, the named constants. What's happening here? Subphrases question equates to subphrases 0, as the constant question is assigned a value of 0. So the question member of the MCC class instance is being assigned to the 0th element in subphrases, the question, and so on. One final section of code is your old friend, the if-else block. And then it shows that with 3 possibilities. An if, followed by an else if, followed by another else if. Here, the last member of the multiple choice class, correct answer, is populated by examining the 3 candidate answers. The question is, which one has the star or the asterisk prepended to it, indicating that it's the correct answer? We look for it by this code, and it shows the code used, which uses a contains to see if that particular string contains a star. If the candidate answer that we are examining does contain a star, we assign the corresponding value to our custom class's correct answer member. Then, since we don't want the star to remain as part of the string and tip off the user that it is different from the other answers when we display to him in the radio button, we remove that first character from the string with this code, and it shows how that's done. The substring function returns a subset of the string, starting from the position passed in the argument, which is 1 in this case. As 0 is the first element and star is the first element in the string, that is what is stripped out. Everything after the star is then assigned to the candidate answer member. So, for example, star B Birtles becomes B Birtles. Once the star is found in one of the candidate answers, any remaining else parts of the code are ignored or skipped. They only run if the star has not been found yet. There is actually one more piece of the code to be discussed, the try except block, but that is a big and important enough topic to leave for the next step. Until then, earth-shakingly important notice. If you have a basic programming question suitable to an audience of kids, send it to idiolectable@gmail.com, specifying whether you would like your name and location used if it is printed in a future step of this newsletter. If you are a subscriber to the newsletter, you can also leave a question at the bottom of this step in the comments section. If you do not want to give your real name, a nickname is acceptable. The first letter to the editor of mine that was printed appeared in Rolling Stone magazine back in the early 1970s. That's 1970s, not 1870s. And I signed it Sylvester for some reason, which I no longer remember. Also, it's always interesting to see where people are from, so please provide your city or town and the state it's in too, or province, or whatever the region where you live is called.